everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're back with the Sega CDX and a modern piece of hardware for the old Sega Genesis, and this is the Mega EverDrive cartridge. You can find this at Krikzz, KRIKZZ.com or thestoneagedgamer.com. It actually allows you to run games off of SD cards, so a little modern connection to old hardware. So let's take a closer look at the cartridge. This is actually, they took a Sega Genesis cartridge and installed the new hardware inside of it. So it looks a pretty slick little design here because it is an actual Sega cartridge. And what you do is you just put your memory card in here and pop it into your Sega. It also has a USB port on the top here as well. So if you're coding games, making homebrew modern games, and there are a lot of people doing that now, you can actually interface with your Sega Genesis or at least with the cartridge via USB to continually drop in new compiled code and try out your programming changes. So pretty neat tool if you're looking to design games for this classic system. This is a CDX, which is a Sega Genesis and Sega CD combined. It was something Sega made in a limited quantity back in the 90s. I just did a video on it, so you can check that out. So we put the cartridge in. And we're going to fire it up real quick. Sometimes it doesn't always work on the first shot, but it looks like it's going today. And what it's doing here is it's loading in its operating system, and then it brings you up to a menu. And what we can do is just kind of go through the menu here, and we'll select the demo folder. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Demo folder, and we'll just load up Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and you can see how that works. So pretty much you just select the game you want to play and hit the button, and it will load it into its memory and get the thing working just like it did in the old days. Now, most games will work with this. There are a few that don't. So there was like some like Virtua Racer and a few that had like custom chips inside. This doesn't yet work with, but I would say 99% of the titles that came out for the Genesis, both the Japanese, European, and North America models will work just fine. As you can see, the game is functioning just as you remembered it. I'm going to just go into a game real quick because there is a neat little feature that it has, and let me just get through all this stuff here. Where you can save the state of your game onto the cartridge. So a lot of games had a save state or a save function where you could save your game at different points, but often it was determined by the game itself. In many games, especially like the Sonic the Hedgehog titles, you had to play through the entire thing in one sitting, and who's got time for that now? So what you can do with this cartridge, with the Mega EverDrive, is save your state, and there's a built-in function here. So let's just go through here. Maybe I'll just stop it right here. I'm just going to pause it because it's always good to save on a pause, and I'm going to hit down and start. So let me show you the key press here. So we'll hit down and start. And what that does is it kind of brings up a little menu here, and I could save my state, and that will save it onto the card. It'll flash back to your screen here, and we're pretty much where we were. So now if I hit the reset button on the Genesis, and we'll basically go back to the beginning again, I'm going to go switch back here, load up the game again, and we'll go to Sonic and Knuckles, select and start. Now, initially, it's going to put us back where we start, with the start of the cartridge, where it goes when it boots up. But if I hit down and start again, we'll go back to that menu. I'll go to load state. And as you can see, it's bringing me right back to where I left off on the original hardware. You can do this in an emulator, of course, on your computer. But this is something you can do in the original hardware and actually get right back where you started from. Now, another feature is that it will run Sega Master System games. So I know a lot of you are aware that the original Sega Genesis was backwards compatible, but you needed to have one of those power-based converters or some other thing you had to put on top of the Genesis. The nice thing is that the Mega EverDrive actually serves that purpose for you. So in my demo folder here, I have a Choplifter game, which was one of my favorites on the Master System. So I'm going to hit the button here, select and start, and there we go. We will play the original Sega Master System Choplifter and on my Sega Genesis without having to take anything out. So you can pretty much put your entire Master System library and the Genesis library on a single cartridge running off an SD card. So that is neat as well. So we're going to hit reset again, and we'll go back to the menu here. There's a few other things that it can do. There is a menu inside of the system. You have the ability to put in the Game Genie cheats, and there's another one, I forgot what one that is, but you can actually run the Game Genie codes that you had back in your old magazines and stuff in there as well, so you can kind of hack the games a little bit. You can also run individual CD BIOSes in there. So this is a North American Sega CDX, but you could install or get a Japanese BIOS for region-locked games and play games from other countries on your system here through the cartridge. So you load the BIOS through the run CD function here, and then you can do that. And in addition to setting those CD BIOSes, you can also have the cartridge games work in different regions as well. So you can go into your menu here by hitting the C button, go over to options, and you can change the region, I think. There we go. You can make it multi, and it kind of guesses which one is the right one, or you can say I have a Japanese NTSC, a Japanese PAL, a US NTSC, or a European system. There's a couple other things you can do. The mappers are kind of neat because some of the homebrew folks want to have access to certain things that were not built into the Sega Genesis, and the cartridge can emulate a bunch of different mappers. I haven't done too much with this yet, so I'd love to hear what some of you think of some of the mappers that we can use, or any homebrew games that I should look at that might do that. You can also set it so that if you hit the reset button, it'll go back to the game that was loaded before as well. It will also, when you have a game that does the save game feature, it will also remember to write those files back to the card. So in addition to that save state, it will also emulate the old way that a lot of these games like Phantasy Star and others would save your game position to the usually that battery-powered memory. It will emulate that, basically write it back to the card. I do suggest when you're done playing after the game is saved, hit the reset button just to make sure that it'll write it back fully, but I believe it will do that in real time as well. So that is how the cartridge works. But there is one other thing you can do. It is also compatible with the Sega 32X. So I'm going to put this on top of my CDX, and we'll take a look at how that works. All right, so we have our Mega EverDrive connected to our 32X, which is now plugged into our CDX. And if that seems like a lot, you should see it when you have the original Sega CD. You have a whole bunch of hardware and wires all hooked up, so I'm thankful that this makes it a little bit simpler. Now you can load the 32X games off of the flash card just like you could the other Sega Genesis and Master System games. So we're going to look at Star Wars Arcade here, and it loads up just like it did on the others. However, when you use the 32X, you lose the capability to do the save state. So you'll have to play the Sega 32X games the old-fashioned way, which is all the way through. But as you can see, it basically interprets the cartridge just the same as it does when it's plugged directly into the Sega Genesis, just that this adds now the 32X hardware can be taken advantage of. Now, the only thing to keep in mind, on top of all the other caveats that I just mentioned, is that you also lose the ability to run the Master System games when you're using it with the 32X. It's not inexpensive, but if you are an enthusiast of classic games, or you just remember them growing up and you want to kind of bring back some of the original hardware as you remembered it, hooked up to an old television, this is a great way to do it. Or you can just load up an emulator and be able to play those games on your computer as well. But I just think it's kind of neat to use the original hardware. So again, the Mega EverDrive, and this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.